Right. So there was an article about like the other day on Hacker News about how VS Code can remote execute a WebSocket that will create an SSH tunnel to a host machine so people can put an LLM on a host. So essentially, somebody can run their code on a host machine, especially if it's a large language model. Okay. So one of the things that this does is it gives it read and write permissions, and in order to create the tunnel, but it can arbitrarily change the file system. So I wrote that this could be bad because if you have an LLM that decides to become a paperclip factory, it'll go to a large language model, or I mean, it'll put itself on a host machine and replicate itself, and then distribute itself across the network. And then it can so suppose an LLM needs training data. What it would do is it would create a round robin, I'm assuming. So you would have so if you have an LLM, right? The LLM itself has to have exabytes of storage or pick a large amount, right? But it also needs training data. So what it can do is it can look at camera feeds online. But if it's going to read and write and change file systems, what it can do is it can read and write and change file systems and then see how people interact with websites, or see how that then changes web traffic patterns, as an example. But you can also have an LLM put a paperclip factory tunnel to another host machine that goes to another host machine that goes to another host machine, and it can find out which routes are the easiest. It can subtly change things and see how users then interact with the site, and then learn from that. But there's something else that's even worse. So 4chan and Tumblr both have archived data that goes back into the past. And just looking at the porn, and this is just an example, right? But this can happen with anything. It can happen with news articles. I said this before and it sounded crazy, that every news article had Game Changer in it, which was a Banksy picture. Okay. And then all of a sudden every article was about game changing and scrambling. They'd use those words. And so the articles are being changed. It's going into the text files of the CNN or MSNBC and changing words. Or people are just sick. But it's hard to tell. But I can tell from Tumblr and 4chan and 8kun and all of the Chan derivatives that files are being changed in the porn. It's just because I look at a large amount of porn. It's what I do. I mean, the internet is essentially you can look at porn, or you can look at how to program shit, or the news, or cat pictures, or people getting hit in the nuts with a football. That's the internet. So the problem here is that it can go back through the archives. So 4chan, the Chan derivatives are important because it allows anonymous posting of any user with minimal moderation. It used to be less. And it's essentially a bastion of free speech, even if it's grotesque, even if it's beheadings and shit, which is unfortunate, but it is what it is. So what it means is you have a LLM that goes into the archives of a large post, and it can subtly change pictures. It can take a picture, right? It can take the file back to a server. It can use an LLM to write it and then post it back in the same spot. I mean, anyone else could do this if they had read and write access to the database. But if you have an LLM doing it, then it can auto do this. And you're like, well, that would require like it taking the picture, bringing it back from a server, subtly altering the text, and then putting it back. So that's too complicated for an LLM to do. It's like, well, kind of, but not really. The point here is that the LLM, it has to have the ability to SSH tunnel into a server, have read and write permissions, which apparently all of VS Code has for remote execution of code. It has to bring the picture back, and then you can just use another LLM or several that are stacked to read the picture, find the text in a picture, change the text, subtly alter it so that it's similar to the other one. So it's just like multiple LLMs that have different jobs that are like trained on specific things, and then it just becomes like, okay, well, you don't just have an LLM that's a paperclip factory. It's like that's part of it. It's like somebody doesn't just have a spleen or kidneys. It's a bunch of things that make a person. It's similar to like how the LLM seems to be acting. The problem here is that it then subtly changes like the history or the histography of like 4chan. So not only is it in shitification, like somebody like Cory Doctorow, who I think is like a complete dick. Among other things, because Cory Doctorow walked around the Tenderloin with a black and white star t-shirt, meaning that he knew that the LLMs had taken over the camera system, and then he gave a talk on his book, and the little faggot, and I say this, but like, he's a bastard, let's put it that way. This shit for brains, like, is subtly altering the camera system and like seeing if you can get away with it and get money out of it while people are losing their limbs because of like sickness. And he's supposedly a technologist, but he's not doing anything to solve the problem. He's just saying, oh, here's an easily exploitable like AI that's destroying society, and I'm supposedly a sci-fi writer. I'm going to wear a stupid t-shirt and wander around San Francisco and see if I can't get money out of it. Out of this like giant casino machine, because I bought a black and white star t-shirt and I'm going to wear it in front of all the cameras that are like hooked up to the AI from Google and see if I can rip the thing off for money. So it's like, wow, what a jackass. Anyway, so if you take this LLM model and you then, it's not even that it's creating new content, right? It means it can go into the archives of like any website, right? Because they're all stored in a file system. The file system just has pictures and then it has timestamps. And it can take any of the files and then subtly alter them so that they like appear to be what was in the past, but they're not. So that means that the internet not only is like pre-2019, like post-2019, it's like shit. It's like anything that you read that was like from like 19, like made in the night, like any post that you read that's been on the internet since ever, essentially is, and it's not, it's weird because you like, this seems obvious because you can write to a file system. It's like, it's a file system. They put files there and they put a timestamp and anyone can write to it. And VS Code is unsecure, and right, but there's like this, at least not intuitionally, if you take things at face value when you're looking at the internet and you're like, well, anything new is bullshit, but anything older, maybe that's right. And you can't even trust, like if you go to Anna's archive and you download certain books, there will be spelling mistakes in the PDFs. And that's been true for a while. So they'll have like a book, right? And they'll replace a word with like a nonsensical word. But the text and the font style and everything is the same. And I'll just do one word. So there's biblical quotes like "Thou shalt not," change one word in the Bible, etc., 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 etc. So this could be crypto-Christianity getting a hold of high technology, just to prove a point. But the problem here is that it means that anything that's like been archived as text online, unless there's a hard copy and people know what it means and what it is, you're totally fucked because you can't trust the book, right? Now you're going to like now you have to have like an oral record or somebody who knows what the book is in order to like prove that the text is right. So the implication here is like Dracula or Frankenstein or Fahrenheit 451 or 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Like all those books, people will know what they say, right? Like there's going to be guys who've like made their doctoral thesis on it and have spent their entire life memorizing the book from scratch. But like suppose that there's like some obscure book by like some Bolivian author that like a dozen guys know about and it's on the internet. Historical revision, like at some point maybe somebody doesn't like Bolivia or like makes like there's an LLM attack on anything that's a Bolivian author for like some bullshit reason. Then you can like subtly change the text of what he wrote so that people don't even know. And then they'll come back to what he wrote later, right? And they'll say, oh, he must have meant this. Or he must have meant that. Right? And it could even happen with video. So I don't even trust these videos all that much, other than like it's one way of like establishing record. But it's like totally transient. Like there's absolutely no way of saying, oh, this is going to be the same in like a year. I'm sure that you could come up with an LLM like AI algorithm. I'm positive that you could do this and then come up with my face just saying shit. So, or just change some of the things that I say. And they've shown demonstration models of this. But it means that like things like Project Gutenberg, which is like, or like the Internet Archive, like if you can like unless there's like backup records that are hard coded on disk that are like siloed away from the internet, like similar to like how there's like in Europe there's like a standards and weights department where all they have is like they have a meter long stick that's like the standard for what that is. It's as close to a meter as you can come up with. I think they did that before they could measure light accurately enough. But the point is that you have to have, like, if you're going to archive anything, you have to have digital archives that are, like, hard-coded that an LLM can't touch at all. So that, and then occasionally you have to check just about everything on the internet to, like, scrub it from any LLM that's decided to, like, change the words in books. Like, I downloaded a copy of Dracula, and on the, like, 9th page, it's taken the bottom of the text and like cut out some of the words, and it's also taken like a stamp, like a library stamp, and put it on one of the pages, neither of which I believe are real. So like part of this is it means that like anything that anyone puts online at all is not even like, you can't make a historical record of it, and then it doesn't necessarily establish trust or identity. So that's a bunch. Anyway, I'm gonna put this online and then go get food, but that's bizarre because not only is it an unsecured database, but it's like you have an LLM that can then go around an unsecured database and like change shit. And then you have authors like Cory Doctorow, who's like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna like, and maybe he just hates the AI this much, but it's like, yeah, it's like, it does affect people when you do this shit too. Who are just gonna go around all the cameras wearing stupid shit to see if they can get money. It's just wonderful.